You're just going to throw me. Okay. Only the strong survive. These are the ones that managed to sit through my rambling on PowerShell 1, and we are now on PowerShell 2. I see a couple new faces. Hi. So, if you missed number 1, you missed a lot, and we're not going to go back. But it is recorded. Somewhere I had a vanity slide. Where was that? Do you remember?
It's in your PowerPoint. Let me see.
Well, I know that. Maybe I'll get lucky.
Yeah, open up PowerPoint.
Woohoo! Alrighty. Just because we have new people, I ordinarily wouldn't do this, but this is also for the recording as well, right? So, you can see who I am. I'm an MVP with SQL Server. By the way, it's pronounced phonetically McCown, not McCowan or McCowan or McCowan. It's McCown. Cow. I'm a contributing editor with InfoWorld Magazine. I do tons of free training videos on midnightdba.com. And I'm serious. I've got dozens upon dozens upon dozens of videos, and every one of them 100% free. You can download them, distribute them, do whatever you want. Am I right?
He's right.
I am not lying. Tons of stuff on PowerShell. Almost everything I do here is in there free. I've even got like a 6-part course that I did for the user group a couple years ago that's online, so you get like 6-7 hours of free PowerShell training there. And they're all even broken up into little tasks on top of that. And a lot of stuff that I don't even begin to mention in these talks here is up there. So if you want to learn how to do something in PowerShell and see like a quick 3 to 10 minute example of it in video, then go up there and I explain all kinds of things. Our web show that we do every night, DBAs at midnight. Did I just say every night? That we do every week, because every night would be a lot of content. Starts at 11 p.m. Central. We're DBAs, so we base it mostly around databases, but there's a lot of good general IT stuff as well. We have different awards that we give out to companies. Sometimes it's most of them are for doing bad stuff, right? So we have like a cornhole award and all types of stuff like that. We introduced a brand new award this year, this season, that I'm not going to mention. You just have to go watch it but trust me, the show is mostly not safe for work. I mean, we're real. I mean, we don't bother catering to absolutely everybody from the sailors to the Mormons, right? We talk how we talk. We use a little bit of bad language, if you don't mind that, and you either love us or you hate us, right? So come and watch the show. I'll be talking about these classes tonight on the show. And we'll see how it goes. There you go. That's the last of my vanity slides. Let's get into PowerShell. I don't really believe in that whole thing, but I got to tell you who I am and everything, right? I mean, okay. PowerShell, where were we? When we last left our hero. Okay. So let's get into, last time we were talking about Git service, right? Let's go ahead and fire up PowerShell because this is demo rich. And I'm going to assume that everybody could see it last time, can see it this time, so we're good. By the way, you can change those colors the same way you do in DOS, right? Come to properties and you can change the colors and all of that. Because it starts out as this black on white thing, and I like to differentiate it from DOS myself, right? However, and I'm going to deviate from this just a little bit. I didn't deviate from my last plan at all. Wink, wink, wink. But remember I was telling you how PowerShell just integrates perfectly with DOS? Well, if I want to pop into DOS, all I got to do is type command and I'm there. All I got to do is type exit and I'm back to PowerShell. So I can even go into DOS from here and do stuff, right? Okay, so one thing that you guys forgot to remind me to talk about, so I hold all of y'all responsible, especially the girl in blue. It's mostly your fault. You're new, so I'm going to pick on you, okay? Yeah, but he looks like he's got some guns, so I don't want to mess with him. So, remember how I said that it integrates perfectly with DOS, so you can do things the way you're used to doing them in DOS, and you can just incorporate the PowerShell portions as you see fit, right? You can use PowerShell as like a conduit, right? So let's explore that here real quick with a real simple example. not pint, ping localhost. Okay, so you can see I've got a very extensive IP address, right? But the point is let's say that I wanted to do something with ping and PowerShell, and I wanted to ping a bunch of servers, right? There are better ways to do this in PowerShell, but I'm just giving you an example of how it can integrate with what you already know, right? So let's say I have right? So I can print A, right? So I can integrate DOS commands with PowerShell variables, and I can put them inside loops. So I can run the same loops that we were doing in the last portion, and I can run a DOS command if I wanted to, and just replace the parameters with PowerShell variables, and then I'm back to doing what I know how to do in DOS using the DOS command, and only using PowerShell as a conduit for doing that against multiple objects or multiple servers.
So what about like a shutdown MSR or config or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Type command to get there, or can you type?
No, I did that directly from. I'm in PowerShell. See it?
Why would you go to command then? Why would you type a command?
Don't know. I'm just showing you that you can. Okay, so yeah, I've never had reason to do it, but I've never come across a command that didn't work the way it should in PowerShell. So and when I get my variables okay, so I'll take a new poll. How many of us are database folk in here? Because last time it was sketchy. You are? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So like everybody knows BCP. You just know what it is. Huh? I'll take that as a no. So I'll cut the BCP example. Okay. It's a command line tool for databases that you can do stuff with. All right. So I just wanted to show you that real quick because it crossed my mind that I said, don't let me forget, and you guys are slacking. So we'll get back to services. CLS to clear the screen. That's the same as it is in DOS, right? Get service, and we can get all the services. Do a GM against it, and we can get all of the properties and methods, right? So there are two ways for working with services in PowerShell. You can do get service, or you can work with the WMI object, Win32 service. You saw me do that before when I was given the VB script example, right? Well, you can call Win32 service and call the exact same methods and properties that you did before, only it's easier. Now, there's a commandlet called get-WMI object that I refuse to type out for you. Okay, but I'll use the alias of GWMI, right? Get WMI, and now you just call and now I've got all these guys, right? So let's prettify that. There we go. So now I can get the display, right? So now what if I wanted to get, the display, the status, the so on that we did before? How would I do that? Is it going to be called display name? Is it going to be called status? Is it going to be called state? What's it going to be called? Yeah, I don't know either. Let's do a get member, right? So let's use only one pipe. There we are. So I've got all my properties here. I can get name, the system name. I've got all this nice double underscore stuff here. But there's the display name that I was talking about. There's a couple methods, and it's probably status, right? And the start mode. That's interesting, right? So I wonder if I could get all of the services that are set to automatically start that aren't started. I could probably do something like that, right? That's pretty easy. I'm not necessarily going to... If you want to see it, let me get through the list first, and then I'll come back and code that for you, right? But the point is stop service and start service, resume service. You notice how these aren't called the same thing as they were in the get service commandlet? This is why you're going to be in get member all the time, because when you change the way you do something, or you do something a little bit differently, then you'll have to come in here and look up you'll get an error when you go to call the method, right? Now, in PowerShell 1, you used get service and Win32 service for different things. You used get service for the local box, and you used the WMI call for external boxes. Now you can use get service against external boxes, and you can use Win32 service. You can use WMI for external boxes. So that gap is closed a little bit. The WMI object still has more functionality and more properties than get service does. So I prefer to use the WMI class instead of the get service commandlet. That's just a personal preference. A lot of people like the get service commandlet. That's fine for them. But and I also got started using it when I could only use get service for the local box. If I have to use WMI for external boxes, I might as well use it for the local box as well, right? So I could easily call, and here I'll show you this. Or maybe it's just GWMI. Yeah. Just GWMI. Stop that. So you see here I got a list of parameters, and all I got to do is call computer name and pass it the computer name I want to do, so I can get all the services for that computer, right? So, and I can stop all of them, and I can do it for a whole list of computers we did that last time. See how easy it is to iterate through an entire list of objects to get to do something to them or to get information on them, right? So the difference between GWMI and get service are vast. Not to mention you get, here, let me get past this. Let me see if I can get back to this. There we go. So the members here, you notice how even the properties here, start mode and start name, I can pull back, and this has been a very useful thing. I'm going to stand again because, man, this chair is just awful. One of the things that's been really useful for me in the past has been seeing the impact of certain changes. So if I want to change, say, a service account, right, or a service account password, right, say it's time to change that password, well, how many boxes are using this account for its services? Right? You want to see the impact of something. I need to change my SQL SVC account. How many of my SQL boxes are using the SQL SVC account for SQL? Well, all I got to do is query all my boxes and use start name, and I'll get the user account for all of those, and I can see what the impact is going to be, how many of those boxes I have to change it on. And as you'll see on some of my videos on midnightdba.com, you can actually change those on the fly too. So any of those you can change to the new password and then bounce the services, and then it's just as easy as a one-click operation for you. Very, very cool. That takes a little bit more coding. I'm not going to lie to you. PowerShell doesn't make it really easy to do that, but it still isn't too bad. And since I've already written the script for you and put it up on the internet, it's really not bad, right? So really, really cool, powerful stuff you can do there. Oh, good, the photographer's back because he hasn't taken enough pictures of me today. I'm just jacking with you, bro. Okay, so, oh wow, we already talked about PS Drive. I don't know why I have it in here again. Okay, so variables and get members and get member. So I talked earlier that you can just create a variable and use it, right? You don't have to do anything special, but it's always created as a special type. So let's say, here, always start at the top, right? Equals, there we go. So I can print it, right? So I want to see what its type is. It was a string, right? Hit B. And then if I just want to get the type on B, there we go. And it's an int32, right? So let's say now that I want to do a get member on A. Well, it's got just one real property, length, right? Can't really do much with that, but I can see how long it was. It's 5 characters long. But I've got all of these nice little things I can do, like split and replace and starts with and substring and to lower and to upper, right? So I can do all that cool stuff, right? That you can do with strings that don't really mean anything to B. Since it's an integer, well, how do you to upper that, right? That doesn't mean anything to an integer, right? So it's very context sensitive in that it has certain methods based off of the type of object it is, and it automatically creates these objects based off of what you tell it to do, right? Based off of the value. It's smart enough to know based off the value what you want it to be. But you can also hard code the type of object you wanted, right? Let's say that I specifically wanted right, string right? So I can force a number as a string. Sure, I can tell it what type I want it to be. Right? So you can...
Change the type already, like B is now a string, not a number.
Yeah, see, because I just did a get member on it, and it says it's a string right there. Right? Because I forced it to be a string right here. Right? So you can force certain values or certain types that we call strongly typing, right? And that's been very handy a couple times as well when dealing with dates. When I'm trying to format it, when I'm getting something incoming from the database and it comes in as a string because of the way I have to format it, and I want it to be a date here so I can format it a different way, then I have to type it as a string, and then things that programming languages make you do sometimes, right? Okay. Alrighty. You can see. Okay, so I've already talked about tab a little bit. I can up arrow and down arrow through my commands, right? If I start typing something and I decide that I don't want to do that, I just want to blow that entire line away, I can hit escape and it'll blow that entire line away, right? If I'm trying to find a certain file or a certain object, like if we were in the tables in SQL before, right? And I had a bunch of tables that started with PER, then I could say, DIR, I could say PER and start hitting tab and it would start cycling through them, right? So you can do that with files. If I go to C and I want to get straight to the Z files, and I can say Z and then tab, 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 and then hit enter, and when I get to the one that I want and do that. So that normal type of command line stuff is there that we've come to expect. Isn't it funny that we've come to expect stuff from a command line now, right? I mean, that's what GUIs are for. Now we expect things from a command line. That's one of the first questions I get from people who have done a lot of shell type coding is, well, can I tab through objects? Can I up and down arrow? So yeah, you can do all that stuff, right? So, okay. Oh yeah, I love this. This is another one of those features in PowerShell that just made me go, really? Wow, that's cool. Okay, all of us have coded it all, right? Especially in, I'm not even going to say especially in SQL. In SQL, in C#, in VB. Probably, did my Java guy leave? Yeah, he left. And probably in Java too, right? Whenever you want to build a string, you have to like do the little quotes and the double quotes and then maybe a single quote, and you have to say plus, and then you have to do a thing, and then put the variable in there, and then put another plus in the thing. So you have to do all of that stuff and build a string, right? That stuff is gone in PowerShell. So cool, right? So let me show you. I'm going to clear the screen again. Let me see if I have an actual example here. Nah, not really. Okay, so let's say A equals, right, because, it's my class. Okay, so then I'll say right? It's smart enough to parse the variable out of there so you don't have to go through that ridiculous string building exercise garbage. It just drives me crazy, right? When you're trying to build, and it's just plus hash 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 plus hash. Oh my god! And it gets so confusing so fast, right? Now,
What if you want to print $A?
now, for those of you who want to print $A, there is a difference in PowerShell in the way that you quote something. If you use double quotes, it will expand the variables. If you use single quotes, it will take everything literally. Okay? So you have control over what you want to do, right? So that's cool too. So I can do both, right? Somebody almost always gets to it before I can say, but the hand comes up. Damn, I was this close. Okay, so as long as we're on text and variables and whatnot, let's talk about escape characters because everybody has them, everybody needs them, everybody wants them, everybody uses them, right? So escape character. The escape character in PowerShell is the backtick. Now, I'm one of the only ones I've ever met that really knows that that character is called a backtick, but that's what it is. It is the one that is on the bottom of the tilde, just to the left of the one.
I was going to make
Huh?
an irrelevant comment. I thought it was an apostrophe.
No, apostrophe is way over here by the enter key.
I thought that was single quote.
And an apostrophe.
Is it? Okay.
Well, you know, when you say apostrophe S, that's the key you hit, right? The backtick goes the other way from an apostrophe. That's an apostrophe. That's a backtick.
Okay.
Right? So, the backtick is the one on the bottom of the tilde. Right there. That is your escape character. You can use that as a new line if you want to, right? But you can also do it, you can also use it in the same way that you use escape type characters in the .NET languages. So let's say, I do have an example here. Let's say backtick in, right? So that's the new line, right? Backtick in is the new line. Let's see here. I believe backtick T is the tab, and so on, right? So you can, and there are a few of those. You don't use those very often, as much as you would use it for like line continuation and things that you want to not be, things that you want to be taken literally inside of a string where it's going to expand a variable, right? So a lot of times, because remember before when we said, let's see what A is. Okay, A is that. So when we said A get member, and you notice how it's a string and its only property is length, and I said A dot length, so I can call a property that way, right? But what if I wanted that to be taken literally and not recognized? So if I wanted to have a period after the A in my sentence up above, right? Where I said, hey there, Sean, or hey there, Cache A, right? And I wanted to have that period after there so it didn't have, so it didn't think it was a property, I would put a backtick on there so it would read that period and everything, and it would parse that variable out properly. Okay? We're golden. Good. And let's see. Okay, double strings versus the thing. Okay, so you can even do that in, you can even use that in paths. Okay, let's see. I think I have. Let's see. Oh, really? Okay, let's see here. I know I have a. There we go. Okay, good. So if I say A equals, right? So I can even say something like that. Right, so even when you're trying to set a path to a command, you can still use variables in there and have them automatically expanded, which is how we get that cool functionality, being able to switch boxes, right? Because all I got to do is replace that current iteration variable in there and automatically expands it, and I don't have to do that ridiculous string building crap, right? So even though on the web show we're kind of loose and whatnot, I say ridiculous string building crap because I try to keep my in-person talks as G-rated as I can. But just know that I'm thinking something a lot longer. Okay. I put my jokes away. Anybody want any more jokes? Or? Okay, let's see. Where are we? Okay, so. Okay, yeah, this is a good one. So, staying on variables again. Now, there are so many things that we can do with variables. I couldn't possibly cover them all here because you can do some really cool stuff with variables. And it would just make your head spin. I could almost spend an entire hour showing you the different things that we can do with variables, and you'd just be like, but it wouldn't mean anything to you because it'd be so much information on a single topic that you'd be like, what was that thing that he said an hour? You wouldn't remember any of it, right? But let's see, do we still have B around? Yeah, we do. And let's do a get type on that. Okay, so let's say B equals 100. It's still a string. Let me just do this because I don't feel like typing it. There we go. Okay, good. So now if I want to say I can concatenate things, I think I can do this. So even though one's a string and one's an integer, it's smart enough to just put them together and just convert that other one to a string and just give it to me like that. So even in SQL where you can't print certain objects and you can't put certain objects together until you purposefully put it as a string, and then you can do that stuff here very easily.
Now, A was a number, but they just add them together.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Alrighty then. Now, you can not only do a get member on the base type, right? So I can say a get member, but I can even get member on its methods. And I can see what members I can call even for that method. So you can see that there's some pretty good properties I can get even on the methods, right? So again, you can go deep if you want to, and you can get some good stuff. I hope I'm done with variables now. Okay, so that's so remember I said this is going to be sort of SQL centric, right? So I glazed over a little bit how to connect to SQL in the last session. So I'm going to go over it just a little bit more in detail now. I'll show you PS Drive again because it's just cool. Okay, now let's go ahead and stay here for a sec. Okay. There we go. And I want name. There we go. So now PowerShell isn't case sensitive. Usually when I use case sensitive stuff, when I go out of my way to do case here, it's for you guys. So you guys can read it easier up there on the screen. But PowerShell doesn't care. Cache little a is the same as cache big A, and it doesn't matter. Okay? And certainly all of these guys up here, they don't have to be. You can call name. See how it's capitalized here and it's not capitalized here, so it doesn't matter. So these are all of the aspects of SQL that you can control and that you can connect to. You can connect to SQL, which is the one we've been connecting to, where you can get to your actual databases. SQL policies. If you have PBM set up on a box, you can check policies and create policies and iterate through them and do whatever you need to, right? SQL registration. Now this one sounds like a good idea, and it certainly is at some level. It didn't pay off as well as I was hoping it would. But what that is you know when you have when you have SQL boxes registered in SQL, and then you can just go in there and make connections to them and SMS. Do you know what I'm talking about? So right in here, let me get all the way over here. So right here I have my Object Explorer. I'm just going to was that right there? Good. So I have my Object Explorer, but if I wanted to see registered servers, and I don't have any servers registered, I don't think. There we go. I got my local host registered, right? So usually you can do that and double click on it and it'll bring it up in your Object Explorer, right? Well, all of those are held in an XML file on your local box with connection info and all that stuff, right? Well, that's what that is. Where am I? SQL registration is accessing your local registered servers so that you could add some or delete some or do something even against, you could even iterate through them if you wanted to and do certain things. But seeing how it's XML on the back end, it doesn't follow the same DOS path patterning that we've come to love, and so it's really hard to work with, and you can't go several folders deep. So if you had things in like several different, like if you had Northwest, Washington, production, QA, test, dev, if you had all these different folders set up under there so you can organize your stuff, it'd be impossible to get to these folders in here. It's just, I don't recommend working with it. You're welcome to if you want, but it's really hard to work with, and I've had a really hard time getting any examples I've seen on the internet or in books to even work properly. So this is one of those things that sounds like a good idea, but I think they really screwed up. The CMS, the whole central management server thing that they have, right, where you can, like right in here where it said the central management server, so you can set up a central management server that holds all of those so everybody can connect to it, so that it's not just local, so that if you have a whole list of hundreds of boxes and somebody new comes in, you just point them at your central management server and then they've automatically got the whole list of boxes, right? They oftentimes say, well, you can connect PowerShell to your CMS and you can iterate through all of those boxes and do it. Yeah, if it's all a flat structure. When you start putting things in folders and try to organize it, that whole method just falls apart. So it's really an unusable model. So only if you've got 700 servers all at the top level and none of them organized in any way whatsoever except alphabetically, then yeah, you can connect to the CMS. But it's also really slow because it has to go connect to that local box and then search through an XML file. I have found things that I can do here just by cycling through either a hard-coded list of servers or getting them from a table query in a database. I can cycle through servers in just a few seconds here, but going through the CMS takes several minutes just because of pulling back that list. I mean, even if you just don't even do anything with them, if you say, just pull back the list of the 10 servers I have in the CMS, practically go to lunch. I mean, it's a ridiculous amount of time to wait for that. So don't even worry about that. Data collection, you're not really going to do much with that, but that's its data collector for its management warehouse. Utility and DAC, you may or may not work with those. The utility as the utility control points that they have for managing multiple servers now, and DAC is their thing for pushing out code that only barely works, so you're not going to mess with that either. The thing you're going to be mostly concerned with is SQL right here. So I connect to SQL. I'm going to bring this up for you guys a little bit. There we go. So connect to SQL. Remember what I said before. Even if you've got a single default instance on the box, you have to connect to an instance. And that instance is going to be default. So on this box, I can connect to local host and connect to default. Where am I? Am I already connected? Oh, that's the problem, is I didn't put CD up there. Okay. I was like, why didn't it work? And this is a local box and everything. It's a crappy little laptop, so it takes a minute for it to come up. So in other words, in PowerShell, everything is a named instance, even if it's a default instance. You just call it default and move on. So why aren't you connecting? Did I shut down the service in the last class or something?
No, it was, you had localhost/SQL.
Oh!
Hit F3 to see
like that. Okay, there we go. You should tell me these things. But it doesn't matter. I couldn't have canceled out of it. It would have had to timed out anyway. Okay. So there we go. Now, there are different ways that you can connect to like local or something, because you don't have to use local host, right? You could use just local, but don't mess with it, because you either have to put it in quotes with the parentheses and then local, or you have to use the hash symbols for it, the %28 and %29, right? You have to use the little codes for it surrounding local. Just use localhost, because doing local is just ridiculous. But once you're there, now it would be easier to use the SQL encode name, but I'm not going to show you that because that's a ridiculous method to use localhost. If you want to see what SQL encode name does, then I've got a video on that. But other than that, it's not even worth messing with. But what it does is, if you want to use SQL encode name for things, it encodes things. It encodes special characters in database names. So if you have something stupid like a database name with a period in it, which only vendors and Java programmers do stuff like that. My Java guy's gone, right? Damn, I just wasted a joke. So only vendors and Java guys do stuff like that, put periods in database names, because who does that, right? Because now even in SQL you have to put it in the square brackets, or it's going to think that it's a multi-part name. But if you use SQL encode with that, which is another commandlet, and pass it that, then it'll strip that period out and it'll put the code in there and read it properly. But who does stuff? I've seen table names with like backticks in them. I've seen table names where the actual table name was double quote table name, and I'm like, really? And I put it in my PowerShell thing, and it blew up. And I'm like, I had like 3,000 tables in the database, and I'm like, what the hell's wrong with it? And I went in there, and it list of tables, error. I don't understand what the, and when you get the error, it puts it in quotes anyway, so you kind of glaze over that, right? And you're like, okay, table name, right. And it wasn't until I went into sysobjects and saw the table name was double quotes, and I was like, really? People do things, man. You know, anyway, so you get into that kind of stuff. Okay. Let me see. I've got to lighten the mood here a little bit. Okay. I don't know if I can say this one in public. How sensitive are you girls? Not very? Okay. How is PowerShell better than your wife? PowerShell only spits out what you want it to. And I'll give one more. And how is PowerShell better than your husband? PowerShell won't watch TV while you're playing with it. That's all you get for now. All right. Profiles. Profiles. That is another really, really good advantage that PowerShell has over VB script, is profiles. You will live your life in profiles. Well, not really. You'll live your life in GM. But you'll live part of your life in profiles and the rest of your life backing out of profiles. I'll explain that in a minute, right? Okay, so a profile is not created by default. And I don't need anything here, so I'll go back to Documents. To create a profile in PowerShell, you go into My Docs and create a Windows PowerShell folder. And then you create a Microsoft.PowerShell_profile.ps1 right there. Okay? PS1 is the VBS of PowerShell, right? It's extension for scripts. Now, what can you do with profiles? Anything you want. Anything we've done in here? Okay. Would you imagine that in here I could create a function to do something? Sure. Would you imagine that I can connect to a SQL box or connect to a something box, right? Yes. So a profile is a script that runs every time you fire up PowerShell, that runs whatever PowerShell inside of there you've told it to run. So if you want to set a variable equal to, like, your most important SQL box so you don't have to type that long path every single time, then you can do that and just connect to the variable and hit enter, and then you do that. You can have functions for certain things, right? So like right now, I've got most of this, I'll use Notepad. I've got most of this commented out for demos because it was taking so long to bring up PowerShell because it's not on my network. So it was timing, it had to time everything out, right? So I was creating a new PS drive for my big SQL box, so I could actually connect to ECL instead of having to type out the whole line, right? And the root of the drive was right here, so I was connecting to my production box as a new PS drive. So then I could just say CD space ECL period, and I would already be at the databases node of my big database, right? Things that you do in production when you need to get to them fast, right? Notice I've got something here called, here it is, get space. So that's a function I've created to get the space on a specific server, and all it does is it lists the drives on the server, and it gives me certain information. In this case, size in terabytes, size in gigs, free in gigs, and percent free, so I can see how much space I've got left in different denominations, we'll call it, right, from my drive. Because, you know, they get pretty big, so I kind of want to see what they are in terabytes and in gigs, right? So this is a really good time. As long as we're here, let's talk about a little bit of advanced format table, because this is where it gets really interesting. In format table, you can create what's called an expression column. And in there, the expression column is at, and then the curlies. And inside of there, you give it a label, which is going to be your column name. And then you give it your column right there. Semicolon, and then the expression equals, and you notice here I'm just taking capacity divided by 1024 gigs, and I'm formatting it. This is all good. This minus F and all of this stuff here is just good, solid C# .NET formatting, right? That I didn't learn from PowerShell at all. I had to go to a C# site to get this, so it's exactly like it is in .NET. And so I'm just formatting that one, and then I've got another one that I'm formatting in gigs. Now, the cool thing about PowerShell is if you have a number and you divide it by 1 GB, it'll tell you how many gigs it is. Right? Pretty cool. And there are a couple other measurements you can use in there as well. So instead of having to go divided by 1024, divided by 1024, divided by 1024, divided by 1020, oh, come on, really? Let's not be children anymore, okay? But you notice even here, I did the terabytes by 1024 GB. I didn't have to go by 1024 by 1024 by 1024. But how many do I have to stack to get the terabytes? 4 or 5, right? So you don't have to be that childish anymore. You can just use gigs. So if I want to know how many gigs something is, so I'm going to take the capacity and I'm going to divide it by 1 gig. Now that assumes that the number you're getting back is in bytes. If the number's in bytes, you're good. If the number's not in bytes, if it's higher, like if it's in K, then I can't do GB. I have to do something like, I have to like divide it by like a meg or something like that. I forget the math. I've got a blog post on how I do that. But I'm going to stand up again a little bit. So you just, for every column you want, you just put at and put it in curlies, and then give it the label, then give it the expression, and then you're done. I mean, it's really that easy. Then you put auto size and you're done. So these are in line. So I'm doing format table. I'm taking the caption, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 custom columns that I'm doing math on to build the expression, right? There's another really cool way to do this. I can set each one of these to variables. So I could say $ size in terabyte, $ size in gigs, $ free in gigs, % free, and I can set all those equal to this exactly. I would just take and put the $ the variable equals in front of this, and then on the end of here I would just say comma $sign that, $sign that, $sign that, $sign that. So there are two ways you can do that, and I like that other method better, but this one I just copied and pasted from something else I did. So do you understand what I just said? Does that make sense? So instead of, here, let me see, because this is my PS1, this is my live one, so let me see, I got this text file here. So, okay, good. So we'll take this format table option right here. So format table caption. So what I would do is above here, and I'll just do one of them. I would put that above here, and I would say $TB equals like that, right? And then here, I would replace this one with $sign TB, and then I put my backtick there for my line continuer. So you see how that works? So then I can have all of my custom columns listed up here in variables, and then just column down here. And then if I want to put a new one in there, if I want to change one, all I got to do is change it up here. So I just add one up here and then add another one down here, and I'm done. It's a nice little clean way to do it if you're going to have a lot of columns, right? Or if you're going to have something that's really complicated, because this is just really simple math, but you can do anything you want, including calling other WMI, making other WMI calls in the middle of that and setting that equal to a variable in a column. So you can even make entire other function calls in there and get that stuff and put it in a variable, and then you can make that separate. So I can make all of that logic up here, and then when I get down here, so you're separating your logic layer from your presentation layer, basically, right? So which is not how we DBAs think. We don't even have presentation layers. So never put a DBA in front of a crowd. We don't have a presentation layer. Okay, let's see where we are. So we talked about, this is important. Okay, so, actually, we're still on profiles. So there are, see, it's a good thing I have this paper here that I almost never use. I should use it more. So there are 4 levels of profiles. All right. This is the one you're going to use the most. Now I'm going to tell you that in those levels of profiles, this is probably the only one you're really going to use. So I said you're going to spend your whole life getting into profiles and then the other half of your life getting back out of them, right? So when you're getting into profiles, you're going to see how cool these things are. You're going to come in here. You're going to put 100 things in this PS1, and everything's going to do exactly what you want it to do, and you're going to have so many of these things down to like 1 little 2-word things, right? And then you're going to open up PowerShell, and you're going to see it's going to take 7 minutes to get a command prompt because you're doing so much. Remember, the more you put in this profile, the more you have to wait to get done, right? If it's just functions and variables and stuff you want to set up, you're going to be good. But if you actually want to connect to things, preemptively connect to things, or preemptively load the SMO provider or the SRS providers or any other providers that you want to work with, that stuff takes time, okay? So just realize, anytime you do that stuff, you're adding time to your command prompt. And I don't know about you, but I'm really impatient. When I open up a window, I want the window. I don't want the window eventually, right? I want it now. I would rather keep that stuff in a PowerShell script and call that script as I need it than to have all that stuff just keep me waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, right? So 4 levels of profile. Let me see if I can get all these right. In the System 32 folder, there's a Windows PowerShell folder, and it has profile.ps1. That is absolutely everything. All users, all shells, all everything. That is what we'll call the machine profile. Any PowerShell that runs on that box will pull from that profile. Okay? And then different levels leading all the way down to here, right? So then you've got all users for only Microsoft. Okay, so there's a distinction, right? I'm gonna get on my feet for this one. All users, all providers, versus all users and Microsoft providers. So different programs have different providers, right? So I've got two separate PowerShell editors on my box now. I've got Sapien, help me, because I knew it before, Primal Script, and then I've got Idera's tool on there, right? And I've also got the one from Quest. Every one of those is a separate PowerShell provider, right? So you notice this one here says Microsoft PowerShell and then I've got one here for Primal Script. So this one will kick off only for Microsoft. This one will kick off only for Primal Script. And then there's another one I could have in here that kicks off for all of them, right? So the same thing at the box level. System32, Windows PowerShell, V1. You've got your all PowerShell provider that every single one of them will read from. And then you can have individual ones. One for only the Microsoft PowerShell provider, one for this other provider that kicks off, one for that other provider that kicks off. And all those third parties love to load their profiles with tons of crap, right? The first thing you do is you always go in there and change the name of the profile or take all that crap out of there to get all that garbage out of there, right? Because it just takes forever to load. But it's there. So you got two machine level ones, one for all of PowerShell and one for Microsoft only. Then you got two user level ones, right? One for Microsoft, one for everything, right? And of course anything else, right? So we'll say all and named, okay? So you'll spend a lot of time putting stuff in there, but you'll also spend a lot of time refining it. But it's really worth it. It really is to put the right things in your profile so that you're productive, right? But you got to remember too, the more stuff you put in your profile. Now, this is where I said you'll spend a lot of time backing out of it, and you'll almost never use those machine level profiles because they sound like a good idea. I want to run a script on this box, and I'll put it in the profile, and I'll put these commands in the profile so that my script is only this long. Well, that sounds like a great idea until you move it to the other box and your script doesn't work. Oh crap, that's right, I got to put the profile in, so you copy the profile over there. And then somebody else says, hey, I'll use that script on this box, and it doesn't work. Well, how come this doesn't work? And they spend forever trying to figure out why it doesn't work. They may not even know about machine level profiles. A lot of people don't, right? And then they come to you and go, why doesn't this work? And you go, oh, well, you didn't put the machine level so it just doesn't scale well. You got to make sure that everything you run it on has the profile. So it's just not a good model. You can do it, but I've never seen anybody that, I'm not going to say I've never seen anybody put it into production. I've never seen anybody put it in production, support it, and leave it in production, right? So that's the problem with aliases too. Aliases are cool, right? I can create my own aliases all day long, but they're only available for this current session. So if you script something with an alias, you have to create the alias at the top of every script that uses it. That's just the way it is, right? I wish we could create an alias that would last for the entire machine and all the scripts could use it. I can. I could put it in the machine profile, but now we've already defined that that's a problem, right? So yeah, I can use it. I can make it so that the alias is picked up every single time, but I got to use a machine profile, and that's not going to scale. And a good rule of thumb, not even a good rule of thumb, the enterprise rule is don't do anything that you can't scale, right? If you're going to do it on one box, assume you have to do it on 100 boxes. And if it's not a process that you don't want to support on 100 boxes, then don't force yourself to support it on one box. Very few exceptions, right? Almost none, but every now and then there's some things you just can't do any other way, right? So, and I can feel my voice is starting to go. Alrighty. Oh yeah, okay, good. This is where I wanted to go before. The next big question I always get outside of, hey, I tried to connect to SQL like you did in class and it didn't work. What's wrong? It happens all the time, right? So what happens is they'll come in here and they'll say, PS Drive, there's no SQL server in mine. What happened? There's a SQL server in yours. You didn't do anything special. Well, yeah, I did. I'm just doing it in my profile. Some things you can do in profile, right? So let's see if it's in here. It should be. Well, it is because it loaded. Not share with, open with. Okay. These two snap-ins right here have to be, you have to load these two snap-ins every time you want to connect to SQL. Actually, I think you only have to load the provider snap-in. But if you want to run the commandlets, any of the commandlets I showed you before, then you have to load the commandlet snap-in. So add PS snap-in, SQL Server provider snap-in 100. It's really not that hard to remember after you type it a couple times. But then it gets harder to remember because you don't want to type it more than a couple times and you'll put it in your profile. So, and SQL Server commandlet snap-in 100. You load both of those, and remember, those are session specific. If I'm in PowerShell and I load both of those, connect to SQL, shut it down, start PowerShell up again, I got to type them again, which is why they're in my profile. Because I live in SQL, I'm always connecting to SQL. It's one of those things that behooves me to put every single time, right? So that's one of the things that SQL PS does for you. When we come here and we say start PowerShell, SQL PS loads all kinds of things. Now it loads them fast, but it loads those two providers. It loads the SMO providers, so you don't have to specifically call the SMO providers and whatnot. So some good stuff there, right? And there you go. Just make sure. Here, I'll show you that again. And this is the first time I've ever taught this class. I've actually remembered to tell people that ahead of time. So it helps to complain. But there you go. And let's see, what else do I have? Use dependencies. Oh, I see. Okay. So there is a cool little feature in PowerShell. Okay, so let's talk about scripting. Don't let me forget to talk about the cool little feature. Yeah, you'll say that in 20 minutes, and I'll go, what cool little feature? So let's talk about scripting in PowerShell, because I got a lot of questions about that after the last class. You can definitely run scripts in PowerShell. And the thing that makes them better than VB script, well, is not only is it that you just can't run VB script interactively, right? But when you're working interactively in PowerShell, you script the exact same way. So in a script, or I'll say interactively, if I typed this line by hand and then said dir and wanted to set that to a variable so that I could look at it, right? That's the exact same way I would do it in a script as well. I would say cd SQL Server SQL localhost default, and then the next line I would say cache A equals dir, and then I would say cache A for each blah, 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 blah. So you just walk through it exactly the same way you would walk through it interactively, and it just walks through those steps. It's really cool. So you have to make very few changes to go from an interactive session to a scripted session. So let's talk about what it takes to script in PowerShell. There's only really one thing you need, and this is the other question I get that I always forget to mention, so again, it helps to complain. When you install PowerShell for the first time, it will not run scripts. And it is not set, yeah, see, and it is not set to be associated with PS1 files. That's just the way it goes, right? So you have to set up a server to run with scripts. So you have to say set execution policy. Now, there are different things you can set the execution policies to, but I want to make sure that's still recording because I heard a funny thing. Okay. But remote signed is probably the most common and probably your best bet, right? So that means you have to sign all remote scripts, but local scripts will run just fine, right? And I think there are two other options you can use, but I've only ever used remote sign. So you set execution policy. It's going to say, are you sure? Yes. Now you can run scripts. It's that simple. Calling scripts, on the other hand, isn't as simple. No, it is. So, you know, like when anywhere you go, if you've got a batch file that you want to run, say you want to run, right? You just type the name of the batch file and you hit enter, and it runs, right? And why Sean.bat? Well, because it's my class. But you can't do that in PowerShell. You have to qualify, even with you qualify either with a static path or with a variable path, not a variable path, not a dynamic path. What's the phrase I'm looking for, guys? Virtual path. No, virtual path. So if I were in the same folder, and I can't do that here because there's no such thing as a batch file under the context of a default instance of SQL. So I'd have to go here if I wanted to actually run something, right? But if there were a thing in here, that I can do. So you have to qualify it in some way in order to be able to call a file, a batch file of any kind, right? So either c:/my/backup/sean.bat or just .waxsean.bat. But you cannot do just sean.bat. That is a security measure they put in to keep from the man-in-the-middle attack, right, where they inject a function in memory with the same name as the code that you have, or at the same name as the batch file that you've put in, and then run that instead. So now you have to qualify it so that it will always go to the file instead of pulling it out of that memory location. So that's how you call. And you can pass them parameters. I don't think we're going to get into all that today, but I've got all that stuff on the website, so you can pass them parameters and all types of stuff. I mean, it's very, very rich scripting. Now, let's say that you did want to take an interactive session that you've got now and turn it into a script. But you've already got it all worked out here. You've already typed all the commands and gotten them just right the way you wanted to, right? The cool thing about this is the history command. I can take the get history command and just type it out to a file. And then one of these days, if I can ever find this again, then I can see the list of commands that I've typed in my session, and then I can just use the ones that I want for my, I can pick and choose the ones that I want for my script. Pretty nifty. I've used that a lot of times when I figured something specific out and didn't want to forget it. I just pipe it out to a file real quick and then look at it at some other date. Somebody had something?
Is there a way to get rid of the ID column? Like if you did all that and you just, this is a script.
Yeah, absolutely. No, not really. Maybe the get history column has, maybe the get history command has a flag that tells you to forget the numbers. I don't know. Yeah, you could do it that way too. But yeah, well, maybe you could use the, I'm not going to go through it now. Maybe you could use the select command and only select the command line instead of the ID as well, right? So maybe you could just do that. Let me see if it has. Let me see. So I could say, what was that? Like that? We'll see. So there you go. Just like that. So I use it. Oh, well, it's not my fault you ask a question and don't pay attention, right? You newcomers, man, I'm telling you. So I just piped it to a format table and said command line. Gave it the name of that column, right? So yeah, there you go. I could probably just use the select command as well. Am I running late? It was, what time did I start? What time did I start? How much time do I have?
1 minute.
I've got 2 minutes. Okay. Wow, I've got so much more material. Oh well. So yeah, you could probably just pipe that to the select command line, and do a thing, and you'd be just fine too. So yeah, there you go. I'm usually just at it to remember a base of operations I wanted, right? But so much more in scripting. I've got some stuff in scripting on the website. My main goal with these 2 sessions, again, was to not only get you really, really excited about PowerShell and know why you should care, but to teach you enough so that you could go off and understand blogs and understand examples on the web and understand examples in books and get the feel for the things you can do and the things you should do and understand the syntax. So you can go understand things and go teach yourself after that.
Is there a couple books you can recommend? Reference books?
The best book that I have seen that explains the basics is, I forget what it's called. No, it's okay, it's okay. No, it's okay. Because if you look up Dr. Tobias Weltner, Mastering PowerShell, it's a free ebook online at powershell.org. But if you just look up Dr. Tobias free ebook, right? Absolutely fabulous book for learning the basics. And he explains even some of the internals of how this stuff works. Absolutely tremendous book. Weltner.
They just got a tutorial on PowerShell on pluralsight.com. I think they have a new tutorial, and all the material on Pluralsight has been amazing.
I'm sorry, did you just say Pluralsight?
Plural.
Pluralsight. Oh, yeah.